The last time he said it, I was standing in our kitchen with my hands still wet from rinsing dishes. He leaned in the doorway in his tailored shirt, tie loosened like he'd just come from saving the world, and stared at the stack of mail on the counter. Bills, bank statements, a glossy magazine with his face on the cover. He picked that one up and shook it at me, laughing. "Look at this," he said. "Cover story. From nothing to a multi-million-dollar empire. They don't even know the half." Then his eyes slid to me. The smile got thinner. "You're lucky, you know," he added. "Most women your age are still clocking in somewhere, begging for a promotion. You get to stay home, drive what you drive, live how you live, all because of me. Don't ever forget." He tapped the magazine against his palm like a gavel. "You'd be nothing without me." He said it casually, like a slogan he'd trademarked. For a long time, I believed him. I didn't always live in a house with marble countertops and a driveway full of German cars. When I met Jordan, I was 24, a tired black girl in a cheap blazer, juggling a full-time job at a logistics company and night classes in business administration. My idea of luxury was leaving Target with 2 candles instead of 1. He walked into my life the way he walked into every room, loud, laughing, wearing a suit that was too expensive for the room we were in. We met at a networking event I almost skipped. The flyer had promised young professionals, but the room was full of middle-aged realtors and insurance agents exchanging the same business cards they'd been using since the 90s. I was nursing a warm Sprite by the fruit tray when he came over, all confidence and cologne. "You look bored," he said. "That's either the face of a genius or someone planning her escape route." I laughed, because he wasn't wrong. He introduced himself, Jordan Hale, aspiring real estate developer, currently working for a company whose name doesn't matter, because he wasn't planning to stay long. "What about you?" he asked. "You look like you're heading somewhere." "I'm just trying not to be broke forever," I said. "Name's Aaliyah. I do ops at a logistics firm. Night classes in business, nothing special." He tilted his head, studying me. "Nothing special, huh?" he said. "We'll see about that." For the first time in a long time, someone looked at me like I was more than an overworked assistant with a stack of spreadsheets. We started talking. Not small talk, big talk. About how downtown was changing, how old brick buildings were being flipped into luxury condos nobody in our neighborhoods could afford. About how we were tired of watching other people make money off places we grew up in. By the end of the night, he had my number and a shared Google Doc titled Hale Johnson Ventures Ideas. I didn't even remember agreeing to put my last name next to his. It just appeared. The first year was nothing glamorous. It was us at my grandma's dining table, laptops open, cheap Chinese takeout containers pushed to the side, arguing over spreadsheets. He had the big vision: buy, rehab, flip, repeat. I had the details: zoning codes, contractor bids, loan terms, late fees. He would sketch ideas on napkins. "Look, we knock out this wall, put in an island, buyers go crazy." And I would turn them into budgets and timelines. "I swear you're my secret weapon," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "Shh, don't tell the world my genius is really a black girl with a color-coded Excel sheet." It felt like partnership. We scraped together savings. He maxed out a credit card. I took on extra shifts. When the bank said we needed collateral for our first rehab loan, he turned to me with that hopeful, reckless look. "Didn't your grandma say y'all paid off her house?" he asked. "If she cosigns, we could use that equity. Just for a little while. We'll pay it right back." I still remember sitting at my grandma's kitchen table, the plastic covering sticking to the back of my thighs, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Ms. Johnson," he said, "this is how families build generational wealth. You help us get one property. We turn it into two, then three. Aaliyah's name will be on everything. I promise you, we're gonna make you proud. My grandma looked at me, not him. You trust this young man? She asked. I loved her for that. I swallowed, heart pounding. Yes, ma'am, I said, I do. She sighed, long and slow, then signed where the banker told her to sign. That was the first time I saw my name and Jordan's on the same legal document. Aaliyah Elaine Johnson and Jordan Isaiah Hale. Co-borrowers, co-responsible, co-dreamers. We walked out of that bank high on possibility. We did it, he whispered, grabbing my hand. You and me, baby. They're gonna write about us one day. And they did. But they never mentioned my grandma's trembling hand on that pen. They never mentioned the nights I stayed up memorizing interest rates and lien laws, while he watched success motivation videos on YouTube. Our first flip wasn't a home run, but it was a win. We bought an ugly yellow duplex on a block everyone else avoided, painted it clean white, fixed the sagging porch, and sold it 6 months later for enough to pay back the bank, pay back my grandma, and still have a small profit. He took me out to celebrate. We're doing it, he said, over steak and wine we couldn't really afford. We're building something real. I'm telling you, Aaliyah, one day there's going to be a whole Hale Enterprises tower downtown, and we'll look up and laugh about this. I smiled, tipsy on both wine and hope. I think we should fix our paperwork first, I said. Like, if we're doing this together, maybe we should be co-owners on the LLCs and stuff. Not just Hale Properties with you as the manager. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Babe, it's just a name, he said. You know this is our thing. The banks like consistency. One name, one face, it's a branding thing. Inside, we know what's up. I hesitated, then nodded. Inside, we knew what was up. At least that's what I told myself. Over time, Hale Properties became Hale Group. Then Hale Urban Development. Then the Hale Empire, as some blog called it. I watched our life upgrade step by step. New office with glass walls. New house in a transitional neighborhood that was already halfway to gentrified. New car with seats that hugged your body. I also watched something else upgrade, his ego. At first, when people would praise him at networking events, he'd drag me into the spotlight. This is the brains, he'd say, putting an arm around me. I just talk pretty. She does the real work. As the years went on, that line changed. This is my wife, he'd say instead. She holds it down at home, so I can focus on business. Do you work in the company too? People would ask. I'd open my mouth to answer, but he'd jump in. She helps me out, but I don't like to stress her, he'd say. I got this. She deserves to relax after what she's been through. It sounded loving if you didn't listen too closely. To outsiders, I was lucky. I drove a nice car with a company logo on the back. I posted pictures from site visits and company galas. I had a husband who sent roses to my job so often my coworkers started calling him Mr. Romance. But slowly, my world shrank. It started small. Why you still working at that logistics place? He asked one night. They don't appreciate you. Quit. Come help me full time. We're building an empire. You can't do that answering to some middle manager. I dreamed of being more than somebody's assistant. So when the company offered me a modest promotion, I turned it down. I'm going all in on us, I told my boss, with a smile that almost hid my nerves. I handed in my badge and walked out with my cardboard box, feeling both liberated and nauseous. The first months at Hale Group were busy but satisfying. I set up systems, turned his shoebox of receipts into a real bookkeeping process, created checklists, called vendors, built spreadsheets that could predict cash flow 3 months out. We fought sometimes about how much risk to take, but we always went to bed on the same side of the team. Then the empire got bigger. More properties, more staff, more deals, and I became invisible. Not to the work. The work saw all of me. It saw my 2 a.m. email drafts and my color-coded binders, and the fact that I could recite every mortgage account number by heart. But to the outside world, I blurred into the wife. "Babe, all this admin stuff, that's just helping," he told me once when I asked about updating our partnership agreement. "I'm the one signing the deals, taking the heat. It's my name on the line." I thought about my grandma's house, about that first loan, about the way my stomach had clenched when the banker said, "You both understand you're equally responsible, yes?" "Feels like my name's on the line too," I said quietly. He kissed my forehead, already half looking at his phone. "Don't be dramatic," he muttered. "You know what I mean." The first time he said, "You're nothing without me," it was an accident. We were arguing because a tenant had called me directly about a mold issue that his project manager had been ignoring. "You can't just go behind my team's back," he snapped. "It makes me look weak." "It makes you look like you care," I shot back. "That woman's baby is wheezing. This isn't a game, Jordan." He threw his hands up. "You see, this is why you couldn't make it on your own out there in corporate," he said. "You're too emotional. You don't understand the bigger picture. You should be grateful you got to step out of all that. Grateful you got me. Without me and this company, where would you even be? You'd be nothing out there." The words hung in the air like a slapped echo. We both froze. Then he softened, stepped closer. "Look, I didn't mean it like that," he said, voice sweetening. "You know I love you. I'm just stressed. I'm out here carrying everything. Sometimes it feels like I'm the only one who really understands the weight." That's all I meant. I wanted to believe that. So I did. The second time he said it, there was no apology. It slipped out smoother, like a line he'd tested in his head. The third, fourth, fifth time, it became his go-to. Whenever I questioned a decision, "Why are we taking on so much debt?" Whenever I brought up my own dreams, I was thinking of going back to finish my degree. Whenever I pointed out something unfair, "It bothers me that all the credit goes to you when I'm the one." "You're lucky you don't have to worry about that," he'd cut in. "You're lucky you don't have to clock in like other women. You're lucky I pay bills, Aaliyah. You'd be nothing without me." Somewhere between the first duplex and the 15th property, his gratitude turned into entitlement. Somewhere between my last paycheck from the logistics company and my first salary from Hale Group, that never actually materialized on paper, I stopped seeing my own value clearly. He would hold up the life we had like evidence. "Look around," he'd say, sweeping his hand over our open-concept living room. "You think this just fell from the sky? You think you'd be living like this if you stayed at that little job? Be real." And the scary part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. I knew my old salary. I knew what my degrees were worth in the market. I knew I wouldn't have this exact house, these exact cars, this exact access, without the risks we took together. What I didn't know yet, what he was counting on me never figuring out, was that the empire he was bragging about wasn't built on his name alone. It was built on my work, my credit, my family's house, my invisible labor, my trust. His voice got louder, mine got smaller. Little by little, I stopped introducing myself as operations director at Hale Group and started saying, "I help my husband with his business." Little by little, I stopped asking to see contracts before he signed them. He'd kiss my cheek, drop the stack of papers next to my coffee, and say, "Baby, can you just sign those real quick? The bank's waiting." You know I wouldn't put nothing in front of you that wasn't good for both of us. And because I loved him, and because we were busy, and because I had internalized you'd be nothing without me so deeply that the idea of slowing the train down felt selfish, I signed, page after page, year after year, loan renewals, personal guarantees, corporate resolutions, board consents I didn't fully understand. Some with my name under his. Some with my name right next to his. Some I'd later learn with my name alone. Every signature, in his mind, was another thread tying me more tightly to him. In reality, it was something else. It was evidence. Evidence that when he said, "You're nothing without me," he was wrong in a way that would one day cost him everything. But on that day in the kitchen, with my hands still damp and his magazine cover smirking at me from the counter, I didn't see any of that yet. All I saw was a man in a pressed shirt, flicking through bills I wasn't allowed to touch, reminding me in a slow, deliberate voice, "You'd be nothing without me." And somewhere, very quietly, a different voice in me whispered back, "If that's true, why does my name keep showing up on everything you're so proud of?" I always thought the day my life changed would be loud, some big fight, some betrayal I could point to and say, that's when everything snapped. Instead, it started with a calendar reminder that said, Tuesday, refi meeting at 2 p.m., Midtown branch. Jordan tossed the keys at me that morning while fastening a cufflink. "Go handle that for me, babe," he said. "They just need your signature to finalize the refinance on the West End building. I got a lunch with an investor." I blinked, coffee halfway to my mouth. "Me?" I asked. "Don't they need you?" He shrugged, checking himself in the mirror. "My name's already on everything," he said. "It's just paperwork. You know they like everybody who's on the old loan to sign the new one. You'll be in and out." I hesitated. I'd started to notice how often just sign a few things was part of my life. But questioning it always turned into a speech about how hard he worked, how little I trusted him, how I didn't understand business. So I swallowed whatever was rising in my throat and nodded. "Okay," I said. "Text me the address." The Midtown branch was the kind of bank that smelled like polished wood and old money. Quiet, carpet too thick for your footsteps to sound normal. Tellers with perfect hair. I walked up to the reception desk, smoothing my blazer. "Hi, I'm here for a 2 p.m. appointment," I said. "Refinance for Hale Urban Development?" The receptionist checked her screen and smiled. "Yes, Miss Johnson," she said. "Miss Patel will be right with you. Please, have a seat." Johnson. It still surprised me sometimes hearing my own last name without his attached to it. A few minutes later, a woman in a navy suit appeared in the doorway. She looked maybe early 40s, South Asian, with sharp eyes and a calm smile. "Aaliyah?" she asked, pronouncing it correctly on the first try. "Yes," I said, standing. "I'm Reena Patel, branch manager," she said, shaking my hand. "Come on back." Her office was glass on two sides, overlooking the lobby. She closed the door gently and gestured for me to sit. "So, we're refinancing the commercial loan on 14th and West, correct?" she said, flipping open a folder. "Yes," I said. "My husband asked me to come sign." She nodded, scanning the top pages. Then her eyes narrowed slightly in a way I would have missed if I wasn't already on edge. "Okay," she said slowly. "Before we print the final documents, I just need to confirm some details with you." She turned the file so the top page faced me. "This is the original loan agreement from 6 years ago," she said, tapping the header. "Do you recognize it?" I stared at the page. The bank logo, the address of our first big building, interest rate, term, and then, at the bottom, 2 names. Borrower, the Hale Group, LLC. Strong, personal guarantors, Jordan Isaiah Hale and Aaliyah Elaine Johnson. My breath caught. "That's my name," I said dumbly. "Yes," she said gently. "You signed as a personal guarantor. Do you remember that?" Memories flashed. Me, years younger, sitting in an office that smelled like coffee and toner, Jordan rushing me through a stack of pages. Baby, just sign where they put the flags. They need us both. You know how it is. This is how we level up. I remember signing some things, I said. He handles most of it. Rena's gaze softened in a way that told me she'd seen this before. Okay, she said. I want to make sure you understand what this means before you sign anything else today. When you sign this, you became equally responsible for this loan. If your company, his company, defaulted, the bank could come after your personal assets as well. My personal assets? I repeated. Like what? Your income, she said. Savings, property in your name, collateral pledged under your signature. In this case, she flipped to another document, a deed of trust. There is a lien secured by a residential property that was free and clear at the time, she said. Owner of record, Johnson Laverne. Co-signed by you as an heir with future interest. My grandma's name looked strange printed in that cold, formal font. Laverne Johnson. I swallowed. So my grandma's house was tied to this, I whispered. Yes, Rena said quietly. At least for the original term. Looks like it's been partially released since then and restructured, but the point is you were not just helping. You were a full guarantor. The room felt suddenly too small. I thought of every time Jordan waved off my questions about risk. Why are you showing me this? I asked a little sharper than I meant to. Isn't this normal? Couples do this all the time, right? She studied me for a beat. Some do, she said. The difference is whether everyone at the table understands what they've agreed to. I pulled these old documents because, on the new refinance, there was a note to remove a guarantor. My heart skipped. Remove who? I asked. She flipped to the last page of the new draft. Under guarantor, there was only one line. Personal guarantor, Jordan Isaiah Hale. My name was nowhere. He requested to keep you off this one, she said, which frankly is probably safer for you in terms of risk. But when I see someone being quietly added and then quietly removed, I like to make sure it's not happening without their knowledge. I stared at the page, mind racing. He told me I was just signing to help him with his dreams, I said slowly. He never said my grandma's house was collateral. He never said. My throat closed. Rena slid a box of tissues across the desk. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your marriage, she said, voice low. But as a banker and as a woman, I will tell you two things. One, you've been part of this business in a way that carries legal weight. Two, you have the right to understand every signature you've ever put on a dotted line. I wiped my eyes, laughing once, bitterly. He's always telling me I'd be nothing without him, I said. But it sounds like his little empire could have crumbled me and my family too. Rena didn't smile. She opened a drawer and pulled out a card. There's a legal aid clinic downtown that does free consultations on business and family law, she said. They're good, confidential. If you want to understand the full scope of your involvement, what your rights are, what your risks are, they can help. No pressure. But if it were me, I'd want someone on my side who doesn't work for the bank or the company. She slid the card toward me like a lifeline. I stared at it. Metro Community Legal Center, Small Business and Family Law Clinic. I'm supposed to be here to sign, I said weakly. She nodded. And we can still do that, she said. But here's what I propose. I can mark this file as pending additional review and reschedule. I'll tell your husband there were some documentation discrepancies on our end. Give you a week to talk to someone. After that, you decide what you're comfortable with. Deal? I thought about going home and asking Jordan for an explanation. I thought about the way he rolled his eyes whenever I questioned anything. I thought about "you're nothing without me" ringing in my ears like a bell I'd never agreed to hear. Deal, I said. When I walked out of the bank, the afternoon sun felt too bright. Cars slid by on Peachtree, People hurried past with phones pressed to their ears. The city pulsed like it always did. The world looked exactly the same. I did not. The legal clinic was in a squat brick building, sandwiched between a tire shop and a laundromat, worlds away from the marble and glass of the bank. Inside, the waiting room had mismatched chairs and a bulletin board with flyers. Know your rights. Tenant help. Starting a small business? Free workshop. A volunteer handed me a clipboard. "Fill this out," she said. "Attorney'll call your name when they're ready." Under reason for visit, I hesitated, then wrote, "Husband's business." I signed a lot of things, not sure what I actually own or owe. The attorney who called me back was a black man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of tired eyes that had seen a lot. "Miss Johnson," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm Mr. Green. What brings you in?" I set the folder from the bank on his desk like a confession. "I think," I said, voice shaking, "I've been building my husband's empire without realizing how much of me is actually in it." He opened the folder, read quietly. The only sound was the hum of an old air conditioner. First one page, then another, then another. He asked questions, dates, names of LLCs, who our accountant was, whether I'd ever seen our operating agreements. Every time I said, "I don't know," something in his jaw tightened. Finally, he looked up. "Okay," he said, "let me tell you what I'm seeing in plain language." He tapped the first loan. "Here, you're a co-guarantor. That made sense early on. You both needed each other to get started. But over time, he's built everything under Hale-branded entities with himself as the listed manager or majority member on paper, even when your credit, your family's property, and your labor were involved." He tapped another document. "This LLC," he said, "originally filed with you both as equal members. That makes you legally a co-owner. This one, another. Your husband had tax trouble a few years back, right? The accountant put more shares in your name to keep the company stable. On paper, you actually hold a majority interest here." My brain stuttered. "Wait," I said. "Majority? As in, more than him?" He nodded. 51%, he said, to his 49. It was a way to keep contracts flowing when his credit took a ding. Did you know that? I felt like the floor tilted. "No," I whispered. "He just told me we had to move some things around. And not to worry." Mr. Green folded his hands. "Miss Johnson," he said, voice steady, "your husband has been very comfortable using your name, your credit, and your family's assets to build this empire. On paper, in several key places, you are not nothing. You are, in fact, the majority owner or co-founder. You have rights as a member of these LLCs, as a guarantor, as the person whose family house was on the line." He let that sink in. "Now," he added, "whether he's been honest with you about all that is a different question, and whether you're safe, emotionally, financially, maybe even physically, if you start asserting those rights, is something we need to consider carefully." My heart hammered. What does someone like me even do with this?" I asked. "I'm not a CEO. I'm just—" He held up a hand. "Don't finish that sentence," he said. "You're not just anything. You're a woman who's helped build and secure a multi-million-dollar enterprise. First thing we do is get copies of every document with your name on it. Second thing, we map out exactly where your ownership and liability begin and end. Third," he leaned back, eyes kind but sharp, "we talk about what you want," he said. "Do you want to protect yourself quietly? Do you want a seat at the table you already legally have? Do you want an exit plan? Because right now, your husband is walking around telling the world he did this all by himself, while you're sitting on proof that he didn't." I thought of Jordan's laugh. "You'd be nothing without me." For the first time, sitting in that cramped office with mismatched file folders and buzzing fluorescent lights, I felt a different truth settle into my bones. He would be nothing, at least not this version of himself, without me, without my grandma's house, without my signature, without the woman he'd spent years convincing was lucky to be in his shadow. I walked out of the clinic with a folder thicker than the one I'd walked in with. Copies of loans, LLC filings, operating agreements, notes in Mr. Green's handwriting explaining what each one meant. The city outside was the same. But the next time I heard "you'd be nothing without me," I knew I wouldn't be hearing it as a woman who believed it. I'd be hearing it as a woman who had finally read the receipts. If the bank meeting and the legal clinic were the crack, the next few months were the slow, quiet shattering. I didn't go home that day and slam the folder on the table. I didn't scream, "You've been using my name and my grandma's house like armor while telling me I'm nothing." I went home and made dinner. I watched him walk in, kiss my cheek, toss his keys in the bowl by the door like always. "How'd it go?" he asked, pulling his tie loose. "They get everything signed?" "They needed to reschedule," I said, stirring the pot. "Something about some internal review. Miss Patel said she'd call you." He shrugged, already half distracted by his phone. "Figures," he muttered. "Bankers love dragging their feet. No big deal, I'll call her tomorrow." Then he smiled. That same easy smile I'd fallen for years ago. "You're my good luck charm anyway," he said, tapping my chin. "We'll get it done." I smiled back because my face knew the routine. Inside, something was rearranging furniture. Mr. Green and I started meeting quietly, sometimes at the clinic, sometimes on Zoom during the day while Jordan was out putting out fires. We built a map, a literal one at first, colored sticky notes on a big piece of poster board he brought in, like we were planning a school project. "Hale Group LLC, you and him, 50-50 initially," he'd say, slapping down a blue note. "Then ownership shifted to 51-49 in your favor here. West End Holdings, him on paper, but funded with that first loan you guaranteed." Another note. "Johnson Hale Investments. This one is interesting," he said, tapping a green one. "Formed 3 years ago with you as managing member. Did you know that?" I stared. "Managing member?" and repeated, "No, he told me it was just for tax purposes." Mr. Green gave me a look that said he'd heard that phrase too many times. "Tax purposes always seem to mean two things," he said dryly. "Hide liability, hide ownership." The more we dug, the more a pattern appeared. Whenever Jordan needed stability, better credit, collateral, a clean name, he used me. Whenever things were safe and profitable, he shifted the spotlight, the titles, the credit, back to himself. And lately, he was shifting a lot. Mr. Green referred me to a forensic accountant named Tasha, a black woman with braids, glasses, and spreadsheets that could make grown men cry. She sat across from me with a laptop and 3 years of bank statements. "Okay," she said, scrolling. "So here's your rental income, construction draws, operating account, and here are the transfers I'm worried about." She highlighted a series of payments. Same dates, same ranges, same destination. New LLCs with bland names I'd never heard him mention. "Sunrise River Holdings? Brightline Ventures?" I read. "We don't have properties with those names." "Exactly," she said. "These were formed recently. Owned on paper by a trust in his name, not yours. The timing is interesting." She turned the screen so I could see trends. "The heavy transfers start right after the first refinance application," she said. "Right around when the bank flagged your guarantor status. Right around when he suddenly wanted you to sign a bunch of new documents and talk about protecting you with a different structure." I thought about the way he'd been hovering lately, the way he'd brought me coffee and printed out things himself instead of letting the assistant do it. The way he'd said casually, "The lawyer sent over a standard update to the partnership agreement, babe. Just sign where I flagged. We're cleaning things up so you're not so exposed, okay?" I hadn't signed that one. Not after the bank. Not after Mr. Green. It was still sitting in my desk drawer, glaring at me. "What happens if I don't sign any more of his updates?" I asked. Tasha smiled, sharp and quick. Then he has to get creative, she said. And when people like him get creative, they leave footprints, which they already have. At home, the shift in me must have been showing, even if I tried to hide it. Jordan started watching me more closely. "You've been quiet lately," he said one night, pouring himself a drink. "Everything okay?" "I'm just tired," I said. He walked behind me and rubbed my shoulders. "You worry too much," he said. "That's your problem. You think too small. You're still in that paycheck mindset. Out here, I'm the one keeping us afloat. I see 10 moves ahead." I stared at the TV, watching a commercial for some investment app where a smiling couple scrolled through rising graphs. "Is that why you've been opening new companies without telling me?" I asked lightly. His hands froze for a fraction of a second. Then they resumed their rhythm. "See, this is what I mean," he said. "You hear one little thing and blow it up. Those are just small vehicles, tax stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that. I got you. You trust me or not?" I said nothing. Silence, I was learning, unnerved him more than any argument. Then came the COO. Her name was Lauren. Or maybe it was Laura. Thin, polished, always in neutrals, always a little too close to his elbow. He'd been talking for months about needing someone else at the executive level so he could step back from day-to-day operations. When he introduced me to her at a launch party for a new building, his tone was a little too bright. "Baby, this is Lauren, our new COO," he said, arms snug around my waist. She extended a manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you," she said. "Jordan says you built this place from the ground up with him." I smiled. "Did he?" I said mildly. "That's sweet. He usually forgets that part." Jordan laughed too loud. "You know how she is," he said to Lauren. Always joking. They weren't even subtle. Late nights at the office, strategizing. Weekends away for conferences. A shift in his phone habits, screen flipping down when I walked past, bathroom suddenly the only place he could take calls. Old me would have driven myself crazy trying to catch them. New me took screenshots of credit card charges, printed hotel invoices, and forwarded suspicious business trip emails to a secure folder Mr. Green had set up. "You don't need proof he's unfaithful to know he's shifting assets," Mr. Green said. "But a judge looking at spousal support and credibility, it doesn't hurt." The last straw came in an envelope, not a text. He waited until a Sunday afternoon when he knew I'd just gotten back from visiting my parents. I walked into the kitchen and found him sitting at the table with a stack of papers and 2 mugs of coffee. The smell hit me first. Cinnamon, hazelnut. My favorite when he wanted something. "Hey, baby," he said, looking up with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Got a little business thing I need your help with." My stomach sank. "What now?" I asked, setting my purse down. He pushed a neatly clipped document toward me. "This is just a standard postnuptial agreement," he said. "Nothing fancy. The lawyer said it's smart, especially now that the company's getting bigger. Protects you if anything ever happens. Keeps the business separate. You know, rich people stuff." The first page was full of fine print. By page 3, the language got plainer. I would waive any future claim to certain business assets. I would acknowledge that the company and related entities were solely conceived, built, and owned by Jordan Hale. I would accept a fixed cash settlement and the house in a hypothetical divorce, valued at an amount that sounded big if you didn't know what the company was actually worth. "That's specific," I said quietly. "Why now?" He sighed dramatically, like I was being difficult. "Because I'm about to do some big deals," he said. "International money, serious people. They like to see clean lines. One owner, one decision maker. It's better for you. You won't be dragged into anything. If something ever went left, you'd be protected. You like security, right?" I thought of Mr. Green's sticky notes, of Tasha's highlighted transfers, of my name on old LLC filings as co-owner, majority member, managing member. "I should have my own attorney look at this," I said. sliding the papers back toward him. His jaw tightened. "We already had an attorney look at it," he said. "My guy is solid. This is standard. What, you don't trust me now?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm. "It's not about trust," I said. "It's about understanding. I signed a lot of things without understanding before. I'm not doing that again." His eyes flashed. "You're really starting to sound ungrateful," he said softly. "Everything you have, I gave you. This lifestyle, this house, this—" He waved his hand around, encompassing our whole carefully curated life. "This empire? Me. And the one time I ask you to do something that protects what I've built, you want to bring outsiders into our marriage?" Outsiders. He meant lawyers. He meant anyone who wasn't under his thumb. "I'm not signing anything today," I said. "If you want me to consider this, my attorney will review it." The word "my" clearly landed. His lips curled. "You're really starting to believe your own hype, huh?" he said. "What? You talk to a couple people, read a few documents, and suddenly you think you're my equal in this? Let's be clear, Aaliyah. Without me, you'd still be answering phones in some cubicle, praying for overtime." I held his gaze. "Maybe," I said. "But I'd be answering my own phone, signing my own checks, and no one would be asking me to erase myself from something I helped build." That was the moment something broke. Not in me, in him. The mask slipped for a second. "You're nothing without me," he snapped. The phrase sharp as glass now. "Don't get it twisted. You think any of these people would take a meeting with you if my name wasn't attached? You're replaceable. I'm not." I felt the sting. Old habits die hard, but underneath it was a strange, cold clarity. "Then why," I asked softly, "are you working so hard to get me off the paperwork?" He pushed back from the table, so hard the chair scraped. "Forget it," he said. "You're emotional. We'll talk about this when you calm down." He grabbed the papers and stormed out of the room. I stared at his coffee cup, untouched. Emotional. Nothing. Replaceable. That week, he closed 2 joint accounts and forgot to tell me. Tasha emailed me a spreadsheet. "He's moving fast now," she wrote. "Classic pattern. Transfers into new entities, consolidation of control, cutting off liquidity in shared accounts. He's preparing for something." 2 weeks later, I found out what. A courier knocked on the door at 8:30 on a Thursday morning. I opened it in my robe, hair scarf still on, expecting a package. "Miss Johnson?" he asked. "Yes." He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served," he said. My hand shook as I signed his little electronic pad. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slid the envelope open with my thumb. In the Superior Court of Fulton County, Jordan I. Hale, petitioner, versus Aaliyah E. Johnson, respondent, complaint for divorce. He hadn't even had the nerve to tell me first. The petition was exactly what Mr. Waller told me. "You? Yeah, baby." And kind of looked at me like, "What? What's this? Are you kidding me? What's going on? Do you not know what happened to your lover?" I had no idea. Even had I sat there thinking, he was a member of my I get nowhere near the Superior Court. Now what did I see? He definitely thinked I need to come through to get to an end. I asked, "Is a single part of you infiltrated?" He tapped my finger slightly down. "There's no way to confirm it. Such an excuse, Joe, everything roughly. I can't justify it. He definitely didn't tell me first." In the Superior Court of Fulton County, Jordan I. Hale, petitioner, versus Aaliyah E. Johnson, respondent, complaint for divorce. He hadn't even had the nerve to tell me first. My hand shook as I signed his little electronic pad. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slid the envelope open with my thumb. I closed the door, leaned against it, and slid the envelope open with my thumb. In the Superior Court of Fulton County, Jordan I. Hale, petitioner, versus Aaliyah E. Johnson. Complaint for divorce. He hadn't even had the nerve to tell me for Green had warned me about. Jordan's lawyer painted him as the tireless provider, the genius entrepreneur, the self-made man who lovingly allowed his wife to step away from the workforce. They called our house his separate property, the businesses his premarital and individual assets, and me, a dependent spouse entitled to whatever reasonable support he deemed fit. At the end was a proposed settlement. It read like a consolation prize, a lump sum that sounded generous until you compared it to the company's value. Short-term alimony. No claim to his enterprises. I read the last line 3 times. Petitioner respectfully requests that this court affirm that respondent has no ownership interest in Hale-related entities and that all such property remains with petitioner. I laughed. It was a sound too high, too sharp, on the edge of tears. Then I picked up my phone and called Mr. Green. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Johnson," he said, "I was just about to email you, got notice from the court." "Yeah," I said, voice steady in a way that surprised me. "I got served." He paused. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I looked at the petition again, at the line where he essentially asked a judge to erase me from the empire my name helped build and secure. "I'm mad," I said, "and I'm done being quiet." There was a rustle of papers on his end. "Good," he said, "because now we file our story." Within a week, the answer and counterclaim went in. Mr. Green and Tasha wove together the threads we'd been collecting. Copies of the original LLC filings listing me as co-founder and member. Loan guarantees with my name right next to his. The tax year ownership shuffle that made me majority owner in key entities. Emails where he called me partner and co-founder when courting investors. A timeline of those suspicious asset transfers to shell companies once the bank flagged my guarantor status. Hotel receipts, travel records, and expense reports labeled as business meetings that looked a lot like trips with Lauren. We didn't just respond to his version. We flipped the frame. Our filing didn't describe me as a dependent spouse trying to grab half his kingdom. It described me as a woman who had, for years, contributed capital, labor, and collateral without proper recognition or compensation. A woman whose signature, credit, and family home had been used to build the very empire he was now trying to hoard. A woman who, on paper and in practice, was not a guest at the table, but a co-owner he was trying very hard to erase. He thought serving me first would give him control. He had no idea I'd already spent months getting ready for the day he finally tried to make good on his favorite line, "You're nothing without me." The documents now sitting in the court's file said otherwise. Court doesn't move at the pace of anger. It moves at the pace of calendars and continuances and men in suits who bill by the hour. On the surface, life went on. Jordan still posted inspirational quotes and photos from construction sites, like nothing had changed. Clients still shook his hand and slapped his back. He still walked into rooms like he owned them. What he didn't know, at first, was how many of those rooms were about to start calling me instead. Discovery turned our life into boxes. Bankers' boxes of documents, PDFs, email threads, contracts I'd never seen, contracts I'd signed and forgotten. Tasha and Mr. Green sat with me at a long table one Saturday. The office closed, fluorescent lights humming. "Here," Tasha said, sliding a spreadsheet toward me. "This is Hale Group's cap table from 3 years ago." My name sat on the page next to a number, 51%. Jordan's 49%. "This is the same year he told the bank he was the sole owner?" Mr. Green asked. Tasha nodded. "And the same year he started talking about how you'd be taken care of if you just trusted him," I said quietly. They both looked at me with something like pity and admiration. "You understand what this means in front of a judge?" Mr. Green asked. "He's not just minimizing your contribution. He's misrepresenting ownership to lenders, maybe even to investors." I thought about all the times he'd told a room, "I built this from nothing." "Let him say it under oath," I said. Before the big hearing, there was mediation. We sat in separate rooms at a downtown high-rise, while an older white man with kind eyes and a practiced neutral voice shuttled between us. "He's offering the house a lump sum and short-term support," the mediator said, sliding a paper across the table. "He insists the businesses are his separate property and that you only helped informally." I glanced at Mr. Green. He didn't bother to hide his smirk. "Kindly tell Mr. Hale we've reviewed his proposal and find it incomplete," he said. "Our client is prepared to present evidence of her ownership and contributions in court." The mediator sighed. "He says if you push this," he added, looking at me, "it's going to get ugly. He doesn't want his name dragged through the mud." I thought about how many nights I'd cried quietly in our bed while he snored. "I've been living in ugly," I said. "Court is just fluorescent lights and microphones." When the mediator left, Mr. Green leaned toward me. "He's betting you'll flinch when it gets uncomfortable," he said. "You okay?" My stomach was in knots, but my voice was steady. "I'm not folding," I said. "Not this time." The day of the main hearing felt like every courthouse cliché and none of them. Fulton County Courthouse was big and beige and busy. People moving in every direction. Families, lawyers, security guards, couples who looked like yesterday's version of us. I wore a simple navy dress and a blazer. No flashy jewelry, no dramatic makeup. Just me. Jordan arrived in a perfectly tailored suit, flanked by his lawyer and his new COO, Lauren, who sat in the back like she was watching a show she'd paid for. When he saw me, his eyes flashed something between hurt and contempt. He mouthed, "You did this." I thought of every "you're nothing without me." I mouthed back, "We'll see." A judge was a black woman in her late 50s with reading glasses and a stare that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. "Good morning," she said, voice firm. "Let's get to it." Jordan's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a dedicated businessman and a wife who supported him emotionally but was not involved in day-to-day operations. He called our lifestyle a reflection of his hard work, and my request for recognition an unfortunate result of outside influence and misunderstanding. I listened, hands folded, as if he were reading a story about strangers. Then it was our turn. Green didn't start with emotion. He started with dates. "Your Honor, Exhibit A," he said, handing up a stack. "Articles of Organization for Hale Group LLC, filed 9 years ago. 2 members, Jordan Isaiah Hale and Aaliyah Elaine Johnson." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Exhibit B," he continued, "Amended Operating Agreement, executed 3 years later, reflecting a membership interest of 51% to Ms. Johnson, 49% to Mr. Hale, due to credit considerations." He let the number sit there like a quiet thunderclap. "Exhibit C," he said. "Loan agreements personally guaranteed by both parties, including collateralization of Miss Johnson's grandmother's paid-off home." He put a photo of my grandma's little brick house on the projector. "Not for drama, for truth. This is not the story of a man who built an empire alone and a wife trying to take half," Mr. Green said. "This is the story of a woman whose name, credit, assets, and unpaid labor have been woven into the very foundation of that empire, and who is now being told she is nothing in it." For the first time, the judge looked at me, not as Jordan's wife, but as a person in her own right. "Ms. Johnson," she said, "we'll hear from you soon. Counsel, call your first witness." They started with Rena, the bank manager. She walked to the stand in her navy suit, swore in, and sat with the calm of someone used to high-stakes numbers. "Miss Patel," Mr. Green said, "can you tell the court how you came to meet my client?" She explained the refinance appointment, the old loan, my signature as co-guarantor, the collateral. the attempted removal of my name on the new paperwork. Was Miss Patel Johnson aware of the extent of her liability when she signed those original documents? He asked. Rena shook her head. In my professional opinion, she said carefully, no. When I showed her, she was surprised, concerned. It's why I encouraged her to seek independent legal advice. Green clarified, and as Rena's mouth twitched, as a woman who has seen this pattern before, she said. Jordan's lawyer tried to paint Rena as overstepping, projecting her own biases. She didn't flinch. My bias, she said evenly, is that people signing away their homes and future earnings should understand what they're signing. That's it. Then came Tasha. She projected spreadsheets on the screen. Transfers, timelines, ownership structures. Can you explain in simple terms what these documents show? Mr. Green asked. In simple terms, Tasha said, Ms. Johnson is not just a helper. She's a majority owner in at least one key entity and a co-owner or guarantor in others. Mr. Hale has benefited from that when seeking loans and contracts. More recently, he has attempted to move assets into new entities solely in his name. At the same time, he requested a post-nuptial agreement that would strip Ms. Johnson of any claim to those businesses. Paragraph. Would you call that ordinary business practice? Mr. Green asked. Tasha took off her glasses and looked directly at the judge. I would call it a pattern of trying to distance profitable assets from a spouse right before a major legal event, she said. It's common enough that we have a nickname for it in my field. Jordan shifted in his seat. His lawyer cross-examined Tasha, trying to make her admit that on paper didn't always reflect real life. You can't know what was in my client's heart, he said at one point. Tasha raised an eyebrow. No, she said, but I know what was in his accounts. Laughter rippled through the courtroom until the judge raised a hand. Let's keep it professional, she said, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Then it was my turn. Miss Johnson, please take the stand, the clerk said. I walked up, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. Ms. Johnson, Mr. Green said, how old are you? 37, I said. And what is your relationship to Mr. Hale? He's my husband, I said, for now. A small murmur went through the room. Let's start at the beginning, he said. Did you consider yourself a partner in building Hale Group? Yes, I said, in every sense but the one he wanted to talk about in public. He walked me through our history, the first loan, my grandma's house, the sleepless nights at the dining table. He didn't rush. He let me tell it in my own words. Why did you agree to sign documents you didn't fully understand? He asked. Because I trusted him, I said simply. Because every time I hesitated, he told me I was holding him back. Because he said we were a team, even when the paperwork said something else. He nodded. And when did you first realize that, on paper, your role was more than helping? He asked. When Ms. Patel showed me that first loan with my name on it, I said. And when Mr. Green and Tasha showed me that there was an operating agreement that made me majority owner in one of the main companies. I didn't ask for that. He set it up that way when it benefited him. Then tried to pretend it never happened when it didn't. Miss Johnson, he said, the court has heard that Mr. Hale has said certain things to you over the years. Can you share one of those phrases? I swallowed. He would say, I took a breath. He would say, you're lucky I pay bills. You'd be nothing without me. Did you believe that? Mr. Green asked. For a long time, yes, I said. Because everywhere we went, people shook his hand first. Because articles had his face on them, not mine. Because I had left my own job to help him. It took a banker, a lawyer, and an accountant to show me that his empire had my name on it in ways he hoped I'd never see. Jordan's lawyer stood. Objection, he said, argumentative. Speculation about my client's intentions. The judge considered. Sustained as to intentions, she said. The last part about what he hoped can be stricken. The rest stands. Jordan's lawyer tried to undo the damage. He asked if I'd ever called myself operations director on LinkedIn, if I'd ever signed a paycheck. if I'd ever been the one closing a deal in the boardroom. No, I said. I was the one preparing the spreadsheet so he could walk into the boardroom and sound like he had everything under control. Isn't it true, he said, that your husband has been the public face and driving force behind Hale Group's success? I thought of all the late nights, the spreadsheets, the bank loans, my grandma's house, the stress on my body, my mind, my marriage. He's been the loudest voice, I said. But success is not just volume, counselor. The judge's mouth twitched again. When both sides rested, the courtroom felt like a held breath. Jordan stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Lauren had stopped pretending to take notes. The judge shuffled papers, then looked up. I've heard enough, she said. Her ruling didn't come in a dramatic movie speech. It came in clear, measured language. She acknowledged the marriage, the years, the emotional labor. She also acknowledged the evidence. On the question of property, she said, this court does not accept the characterization of Hale Group and related entities as purely the separate property of Mr. Hale. The documents before me show Ms. Johnson as co-founder, co-member, and in one case, majority owner. Jordan's lawyer started to object. She held up a hand. I listened, she said. Now you will. She went on to outline the orders. We would be divorced. I would receive a fair share of marital assets, spousal support for a period of time. But the heart of it, the part that made Jordan's face drain of color, was about control. Given the documented attempts to move assets without Miss Johnson's knowledge prior to filing, she said, and given the reliance of lenders and partners on Miss Johnson's guarantees and ownership, this court approves a restructuring plan negotiated with creditors and counsel in which Ms. Johnson will assume majority ownership and managing membership of Hale Group and its primary holding entities. She looked directly at Jordan. Mr. Hale will retain a minority interest, she said, subject to conditions, including removal from executive decision-making roles and restrictions on unilateral transfers. Any violation will trigger further judicial review. It was in legal terms a compromise. In human terms, it was an earthquake. Jordan started to speak. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. I built... His lawyer tugged his sleeve, whispering, Stop. The judge struck her gavel once lightly. This isn't about ego, she said. It's about equity and evidence. You may not like the idea that the person you've repeatedly described as nothing has legal rights, but she does. She always did. This court is not erasing you. It is simply recognizing her. When it was over, people began to file out in that strange, subdued shuffle of courthouse endings. Jordan stayed seated, staring at the table. I stood, legs a little shaky, and stepped into the aisle. As I walked past him, he looked up. There was fury in his eyes, yes, but under it, for the first time, there was something I'd never seen there when he looked at me. Fear. He opened his mouth, like he wanted to say it again. You're nothing without me. But the words seemed to catch. Maybe because the judge's orders, the bank's new requirements, and the restructuring plan all said the opposite. A week later, in a conference room at the lender's office, I signed a stack of documents that made it real. Amended operating agreements, new bank signature cards, board resolutions accepting Jordan's resignation as CEO and appointing me as managing member and president. Sign here, the banking officer said, pointing. I picked up the pen and wrote in neat script, Aaliyah E. Johnson, managing member, strong period. The logo at the top of the page still said Hale Group for now. But below it, in the space that mattered, was my name. Not as a favor. Not as someone's plus one. As the woman the paper had recognized all along. That was the day his empire stopped being a story he told about himself, and officially became something else. A structure built on both our backs, now standing under my name. with my hands finally on the keys. You'd think that the day his empire became mine would feel like some fireworks moment. It didn't. It felt like fluorescent lights, stale conference room coffee, and my hand cramping from signing my own name over and over. The fireworks came later. Quiet ones. The first was a letter, not from a court, not from a bank, from the county registrar. Satisfaction of lien, property of Laverne Johnson. I sat at my kitchen table in my house that no longer had his name on the mortgage, and read it 3 times. The lien that had once tied my grandma's little brick house to Jordan's risk? Gone. Paid, cleared, released. I drove over that afternoon. The neighborhood looked the same. Kids on bikes, the same old man on his porch watching the world, the same stray cat that thought the whole block belonged to him. The house was freshly painted, courtesy of a maintenance crew I'd sent a month before. I stood on the cracked front walk and ran my fingers over the new brass numbers. My grandma had called this place my little kingdom. For years, my signature had turned her kingdom into collateral without me understanding it. Now, it was protected, fully, in a trust with her name and mine. I put my hand on the brick and whispered, "We're good now, Grandma." I didn't let them take it. The second firework was less sentimental. It was an email from a city contracts administrator. "Miss Johnson, we've updated our records to reflect you as the primary contact and majority owner of Hale Group and affiliates. Going forward, all RFPs, negotiations, and compliance matters will be directed to your attention." I stared at the line, primary contact, majority owner. Jordan used to slump on the couch after long days, bragging about all the people who needed him. Now, those people were being told to call me. The first time I walked into the office as managing member and president, the room went kind of still. It wasn't dramatic, just little things. Conversations pausing mid-sentence. Chairs quietly scooting. Eyes shifting to me, then back to their screens, then to me again. I wore a simple white blouse and black pants, not trying to imitate his big ego suits, not trying to look like anyone but myself. The receptionist, young, nervous, hair in a tight bun, half stood. "Good morning, Miss Johnson," she said. The Ms. Johnson landed differently now. I smiled. "Good morning, Kiana," I said. "How's your grandma doing? She get through that surgery okay?" Her shoulders dropped a little. The tension eased. "Yes, ma'am," she said, eyes brightening. "They said she's healing well." "Good," I said. "Tell her your new boss said she's got to stick around to see you run this place one day." Kiana laughed, a real one. Upstairs, the executive conference room still had the big framed photo of Jordan, standing in front of our first building, hard hat in hand, chin tilted up like a movie poster. For a second, I just looked at it, that version of him. That version of me, out of frame, holding the camera, cheering him on, thinking that was enough. Then I turned to the facilities manager. "Don't throw it away," I said. "Box it. Archive it. We're not going to pretend he never existed." The man blinked. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "But," I added, nodding toward the opposite wall, "I want a new piece there, something that shows the whole team. No single hero shot. We built this together." He nodded again, this time with a small smile. It took time. People had questions. Some were whispered, behind doors. Some were blunt. At my first all-staff meeting, I stood at the head of the table where Jordan had once paced and lectured about grind culture and outworking everyone. The room was full. Project managers, site supervisors, admin staff, junior analysts. People who'd seen me for years and never quite known where to place me. I didn't give them the speech he would have given. No chest beating. No, "I'm the boss now, respect me." I took a breath and told them the truth. "Most of you know me as Jordan's wife," I said. "You've seen me bring lunch, check on numbers, pinch hit in operations when things got hairy. What you haven't seen is my name on the old LLC filings, on the first loans, on documents that tied my family's house to this company's survival. A few eyes widened. I'm not saying that to play victim, I added. I'm saying it because this company was never a one-man show. It's never been built by one genius pulling everyone else along. It has always been built on other people's backs and signatures, yours included. I let that sink in. There are going to be changes, I said, starting with how we talk about ourselves. This is no longer Jordan's baby. This is a company we're either going to run with integrity or not run at all. You could feel the room split. Some faces tightened, a few of his old boys club, the ones who liked the swagger and the side deals. Others, especially the quiet ones, the women, the folks from the field who'd never been invited upstairs, sat up a little straighter. After the meeting, people trickled out. A few came up to me quietly. A project coordinator I barely knew said, "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're the one at the head of the table now." A superintendent in his 50s shook my hand and said, "Ma'am, I worked for your husband. I'll work with you. Not for you. With you." The difference mattered. Of course, not everyone stayed. Some of the executive team took their golden parachutes and left, muttering about not wanting to be part of some revenge project. Lauren resigned before I had to ask. She requested a meeting in my office, hands folded so tight her knuckles were white. "I want to be clear," I said before she could launch into rehearsed lines. "You don't owe me a confession. I'm not here to drag you. Whatever went on between you and Jordan, that's over my left shoulder now." She blinked, clearly thrown. "I didn't mean for things to get so tangled," she said. "I came for the job. The rest just happened." "I believe that," I said, "but understand this. I will not run this company on the same unspoken deals and blurred lines. If you stay under a different culture. If you go knowing I won't be out here trying to ruin your life. I'm too busy building my own." She exhaled, shoulders dropping. "I think it's best I move on," she said. I nodded. "Then I wish you well," I said, "and I hope you pick better next time. That goes for both of us." We shook hands. No screaming, no thrown drinks. Just two women stepping away from the same wreck in different directions. The board, under pressure from lenders and the court, appointed two new independent directors, a retired black woman developer and a Latino former city planner. In our first meeting, the developer, Ms. Gastile, looked at me over her glasses. "You know," she said, "most women in your position would have taken the settlement, kept the house, and run." "I thought about it," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" she asked. "I thought of every woman who signed just a few papers for a man's dream." "Because someone has to show there's another ending," I said. "Not just walking away with whatever sliver he thinks you deserve, but standing in what you actually built." She nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure what you build from here is worth your name on it," she said. We did more than just swap who sat in the big chair. We audited our subcontracting practices, cut ties with vendors who played dirty, started a program for smaller black and women-owned firms to get a real shot at our contracts. We created a scholarship in my grandma's name for girls from her neighborhood going into architecture, engineering, construction management. I went back to the bank, this time not as the panicked wife, but as the managing member. Rena's met me in the lobby with that same calm smile. "Ms. Johnson," she said, "congratulations." "Thank you," I said, "for everything you did back then. You didn't have to pull that file for me. You didn't have to slide that legal clinic card across the desk." She tilted her head. "Women look out for each other when systems don't," she said. "How's he taking it?" I shrugged. "As well as you'd expect a man to take it when the person he called nothing ends up with signing authority," I said. She laughed softly. We walked into her office together, two women who'd each, in our own way, refused to let his narrative be the only one on record. Every once in a while, I still run into someone who knew us before. At a gala, a former client pulled me aside, eyebrows raised. "I heard about everything," he said, lowering his voice like gossip was a disease. Tough break, but at least Jordan left you set, right? He was a good provider. I sipped my drink and let the silence hang just long enough. Jordan didn't leave me anything. I said, finally. Courts, evidence, and my own signatures recognized what was mine. There's a difference. He blinked. Oh, he said, I didn't realize you were so involved in the business. Most people didn't, I said. That was kind of the point. He shuffled, embarrassed. Later that night, standing on the balcony, city lights spread out like a circuit board. I thought about how many women were probably in that ballroom right then, smiling politely while some man told a story that erased them. I can't fix all of it, but I can live my piece loud enough that someone else hears it and thinks, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I'm not nothing. Maybe I should read what I'm signing. Sometimes, very late, I think about the girl I used to be. The one who sat in a cramped office, signing wherever the sticky flags told her to. The one who equated love with trust me and don't worry your pretty head about it. If she could see me now, sitting at the head of a table with my name on the agenda, my signature on the contracts, my grandmother's house, free and clear, maybe she'd cry. Maybe she'd laugh. Maybe she'd just nod and say, about time. I don't pretend this is a fairy tale. Divorce records don't magically erase hurt. Court orders don't heal the years you spent believing you were smaller than you are. But I know this. The man who once said, you'd be nothing without me, now has to watch my name on the documents that keep his lifestyle afloat. My initials on the agreements that decide whether he gets his minority owner distribution. My signature on the checks that pay the team building the next tower with the logo he thought would only ever belong to him. And every morning, when I walk past the new plaque in our lobby, black granite, simple silver letters, it doesn't scream. It just tells the truth. Johnson Hale Group. Underneath, in smaller type, founder and managing member, Aaliyah E. Johnson. Sometimes I stop and rest my fingers on those engraved letters, not to show off, not to gloat, but to remind myself, I am not an extra in somebody else's empire story. I am not the woman who signs in the shadows anymore. I am the one whose name is carved into the front of the building, because it was etched into the foundation long before anyone bothered to look down.